Well, it's a new year, but it's the same old MCU. Look, I have been very vocal about my disdain toward the MCU in the past couple of years. As a massive fan, by the time Endgame rolled around, I've slowly had my taste in the MCU soured with bad movies and bad shows, and the overall lack of direction of the entire cinematic universe. 2023 marked a year of all new lows for the MCU, setting unwanted box office records for the comic book behemoth, and whilst they do show occasionally that they are still capable of pulling off something that's actually good, such as Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or Loki Season 2, the lows are drastically starting to outweigh the highs. Well, like I said, it's a new year, and it seems like we've just hit another low on the MCU slate. For some reason, Kevin Feige thought it would be a good idea to give the character Maya Lopez, or Echo, her own show. Despite being a character that kind of just existed in the rather underwhelming Hawkeye series back in 2021. And strangely enough, they decided that they were going to drop the entire series all at once in an MCU first. And I binged through the entire thing in one night, and I have thoughts. A lot of them. Because this to me just highlights that the MCU has just lost it. Whilst the show isn't a travesty like She-Hulk, it's another big Marvel misfire. So in this video, we're going to dive deep into why that is, and why the MCU just seemingly keeps getting worse, and where do we go from here? Just before we do though, I quickly just want to mention that we have posted a new video on The Last of Us on our Game Overload channel. It's a nearly 40-minute long video essay on the game, and there is plenty more to come on that channel. So a big thank you to everyone that's shown support as we expand this channel across other niches. So yeah, be sure to check it out in the top right corner of your screen. So the Echo series was a bit of a confusing addition to the MCU well before it even came out. Fans have been scratching their heads at the fact this character was getting her own show, and having seen it, I think most of us are still scratching our heads. Kevin Feige has said that this show was the first of what they're calling Marvel Spotlights. I'll let him explain it for you.
It is very exciting tonight. It is exciting that this character represents the first of what we're calling the Marvel Spotlights, which is taken from our comics division, where many of the characters that people know and love now started in what was called the Marvel Spotlight, where we were able to take a character who may or may not have been connected to the far-reaching corners of the Marvel Universe, but had an incredible character-oriented emotional story to focus on. And that's what we're doing with Echo. And she had a great standout appearance in the Hawkeye series, where you learned a bit of the backstory and a bit of the connection between she and Kingpin. But with this show, we get to go back to Oklahoma to see her family, to see where she came from. And it's really a very good personal story. It's our first TVMA, which we're excited about because we didn't have to pull any punches throughout the whole show.
So this to me indicates that good old Kev is a little off the pace at the moment. First off, the Echo character wasn't really a standout character of the Hawkeye series. When they announced she was getting her own show, most people's reactions were based in confusion. Like, think about it. Do you actually know anyone that was looking forward to this show because of the Echo character, or were they looking forward to it because of Daredevil and Kingpin? I think I know the answer to that one. Feige also mentions that this show is the first of these spotlight shows, essentially meaning it's disconnected from the overarching MCU narrative, even though there isn't one, and tells its own personal story within the MCU. Now, I'm sorry, but haven't they already been doing this for years? Like, are you trying to tell me that Moon Knight was branching into the overarching MCU narrative? Like, how was that show not one of these Marvel spotlight things he seems so excited about launching here with Echo? So if Echo is the first one, what the hell was Moon Knight? I'd argue Moon Knight is actually more of one of these spotlight things than Echo is. To be honest, this just screams to me what a lot of fans have already been saying for the past couple years. The MCU just has no direction. It's a mess, and it seems Kevin Feige doesn't even really know what's going on anymore. And it's getting seriously hard to dispute that too. Like, the MCU used to be such a streamlined, well thought out universe, but now it's just a mess of God knows what. And the recent firing of Jonathan Majors Kang has no doubt sent things into a further spiral behind the scenes as well, but we'll touch on that later. So let's actually talk about the Echo show, because God. I was hoping this was going to be a pleasant surprise, akin to something like Andor, you know, taking a secondary character from a spin-off of sorts and turning it into something special. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. So Echo is a series about Maya Lopez, a deaf amputee and former leader of the Tracksuit Mafia from the Hawkeye series, which was a gang working under Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. This series has Maya Lopez returning home to Oklahoma to reconnect with her roots whilst her past still catches up with her. Now, where do I even start with this one, man? Look, this show is by no means anywhere near as bad as shows like She-Hulk, but it's also by no means as good as shows like Hawkeye. I will let you decipher where that falls on the scale, because it's not impressive either way. Now, despite having zero interest in this character at all, I wasn't going into this series hoping that it was going to be bad, or even expecting that it was going to be bad. After all, my dumbass bought into the marketing that this was really going to be the MCU's most violent show yet, with Kingpin and Daredevil there for us to enjoy at the bare minimum. Now, although I never really cared about this Maya Lopez character, as Hawkeye didn't really give me a reason to, the first episode did do a good job in recapping her background as well as what happened in Hawkeye, because I sure as hell could not remember. So it caught you up on where this character is coming from, and to be honest, this recap was actually kind of good. But the show goes downhill from there, and it doesn't stop. I will admit, I binged this entire series and I didn't even plan to make a video on it because I didn't think anyone would really care about this series enough to even hear me talk about it. I still think that as I'm recording this video. I don't think anyone's going to watch this video. We'll see. I don't know. But after 2.5 hours on my couch staring into the abyss that was my TV, Echo is one of the dullest, poorly put together, lazily written Marvel shows I have seen to date. It isn't all bad. There are moments with Kingpin and Maya that I actually rather enjoyed, large in part due to Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He's the reason I'm watching. And there were moments where the darker and more mature tone did help with my enjoyment of the show, but Kingpin bashing someone's face in and a blood squib when someone gets shot isn't enough for me to forget about the show's shortcomings. So Maya heads to Oklahoma for essentially the entire series, and the location change kind of helps sell the cultural aspect the show heavily went for, as well as this disconnected feeling for this whole spotlight thing they're doing. But the cultural side of the show just didn't seem to work the way the writers intended. It was all over the place. Character relationships were unclear, and then there were a ton of flashbacks that well and truly overstayed their welcome in a big way. The writing was just all over the place, and it just felt like things were happening because they were happening, which is something that is becoming way too common in MCU projects nowadays. A go-to criticism of recent Marvel movies and shows is that it's like it was written by AI, and there are moments in the show where I feel that might have actually been the case. Like, there's a scene where Maya is being held hostage in an ice rink. She's been strung upside down, even though she has a prosthetic leg, so that's an interesting tactic to start with. But ignoring that for a second, her leg prosthetic disconnects from her leg, she gets taken to a different room to be contained in, and the people holding her hostage, so, you know, clearly not good people with good intentions for her, kindly decide to go and grab her prosthetic leg from the middle of the ice rink, take it to her where she's been tied up, and then leave it conveniently within reaching distance. And then, oh, wouldn't you know it, surprisingly, she uses it to free herself. Like, you're holding this person hostage for money. You're holding people at gunpoint. Are the writers really trying to tell me that these characters care enough to make sure the hostage has her prosthetic leg in reaching distance when she's tied up? Like, there are a million ways that you can force a situation for her to break free, and that is what you go for? I don't know who hires these writers, man, but come on. But let's change up the topic here. Due to the show getting a mature rating, surely the fight scenes and the violence make up for the shitty writing, right? Well, no. Look, I wasn't expecting big things out of the show when it came to its story or the characters, but at worst, some good, violent action akin to the Marvel Netflix shows. As again, they kept using this for their marketing. but I was left pretty underwhelmed by what this show offered as the most violent show to date. Kevin Feige says they didn't have to pull punches with this one because of the rating, and I'm wondering if that's actually true. Yes, there's more blood in this show than normal, but that's about it. They don't really do anything groundbreaking with the violence here. Like, are a few extra blood squibs when a character gets shot worth you parading around in the show's marketing that this is some kind of ultra hardcore first for the MCU? No, obviously. The Daredevil fight in the show didn't use this new rating for its betterment either, that's for damn sure. But if their aim was to get these fight scenes to be on par with the Netflix shows, then mission failed. Truly, the only scenes worth watching are the ones used in the trailers. You're gonna be hard pressed to find anything else worthwhile here. Like, if you've seen the trailers, you've seen the best of this show. Now, before we move on to the final part of the video, I have to mention the runtime and episodes of this show, because there are only 5 episodes, and the lengths of those 5 episodes, it's just absolutely pitiful. If they didn't release this show all at once, people would be absolutely losing their minds. But what I find mind-blowing is that there are only 5 short episodes, yet it still feels like it's a filler show. It still has moments that just do the same thing we saw 2 episodes ago, like using Maya's family as hostages to just reach the same conclusion every time. This to me is just one of the biggest examples of Marvel half-assing something and just throwing it at the wall to see if it sticks. It truly feels like they had maybe 3 episodes thought out and then decided to make the other 2 up on set as they went along. This show is just all over the place, man, and doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. Like, it doesn't even play on nostalgia all that well. Like, that's one of the easiest things you can do. They marketed this show as Kingpin this, Daredevil that, and it's clear that their plan was to use these 2 characters to get you to tune in and then hope that you stay for Echo, and I doubt it's working. Echo is through and through another misfire for the MCU. So 2023 was obviously an eventful year for the MCU, to put it lightly. We had Ant-Man Quantamania, which was a bust, Secret Invasion, which was absolutely terrible, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which was great, Loki Season 2, which was great, and then The Marvels, which was god-awful and the biggest MCU flop to date. For many people, 2023 was the breaking point when it comes to the MCU, and it's kind of hard to blame them for it. Whilst yes, there was some good in 2023 for the MCU, to say it was a good year for the MCU would just be completely absurd. Numbers were down on the shows, 1 film barely broke even, 1 film was a success, and 1 was a disastrous flop. And I think we can all agree that we were hoping that in 2024, with Marvel really slowing down their release calendar, that things could get back on track. But if Echo is any indicator, it seems like there is still serious cause for concern for the state of the MCU and its trajectory going forward. Now that Echo has released, it means that there is only 1 film and 1 show left for the rest of this year. That's it. A massive change of pace from the last few years for Marvel, and to be honest, it's going to be a welcome change. The last few years, the MCU has been an absolute nightmare to keep up with. It hasn't felt like fun, must-watch entertainment, it's felt like homework. So, you know, you're up to date for the one thing you eventually want to watch. I've said several times that the MCU today feels like mass-produced factory line crap, and the oversaturation of mediocre content has really hammered that home for me. Well, 2024 is certainly going to be interesting because all we have coming is Deadpool 3 and the Agatha series, which the Agatha series, to be honest, is probably going to end up being another forgettable nothing burger like Echo. Again, I have no idea why they thought giving Agatha her own show was just a good idea. Yes, the character in WandaVision was kind of interesting and Catherine Hahn is always great, but they really are just handing out characters their own shows for fun at this point. Anyway, Echo has made me a little worried about Deadpool 3. This is the only film release of 2024, like I said, which is a huge deal. Marvel have said several times that they aren't going to be toning down Deadpool, that the dark, twisted humor, the violence, the funny and offensive wall breaks will still be there despite it technically being an MCU movie. And now that we've had a taste of what the MCU deems darker, violent, and not pulling punches in Echo, I'm worried about Deadpool 3, despite it being one of my most anticipated films of 2024, because they need to go 10 times further than what they did in Echo. Marvel need to get bums in seats for Deadpool 3, and a toned down Deadpool is not going to do that. People don't turn up in droves to movie theaters anymore for shit movies. Your film is way more likely to bomb nowadays if it's disappointing, unlike what would happen pre-pandemic when shit movies would cross $1 billion with no issue. They need the Merc with a mouth firing on all cylinders if Deadpool 3 is going to be a huge success. Taking Deadpool down is the worst thing they can do. The R-rated nature of Deadpool is where the appeal lies, and I seriously hope they don't MCU the character to the point where it just doesn't feel like the other two movies. I know this is a concern many people have had for a long time, but Echo kind of failing at going edgier has me a little concerned about what the MCU's version of a higher rating entails for Deadpool 3. Either way though, 2024 is going to be a seriously formative year for the MCU. They've got a lot of cleaning up behind the scenes to do with the whole Jonathan Majors thing and what they're going to do with Kang. But it seems like it's kind of up to Deadpool 3 to save the MCU, and I'm rooting for it, man. I love the first two Deadpool movies. And I hope, as the only MCU film of 2024, it ends up being a certified banger. But my worries after the Echo series are definitely on my mind. So to wrap this one up, Echo, it's yet another MCU misfire, a show that doesn't really justify its own existence and fails to truly capitalize on its mature rating, leaving me a little concerned for Deadpool 3, which is going to be the MCU's most vital movie probably ever. So much is resting on the shoulders of Deadpool because it's been made clear that the savior of the MCU is not going to be coming from Disney Plus, and it's going to have to come from theaters. The MCU continues to be a complete and utter unfocused mess and seems to just love hitting new lows. They've started 2024 off with a massive misfire with Echo, but will Deadpool be able to turn that around this year? Well, we'll just have to wait and find out.